Good old excellent connection. That's good to see. Let's see what we end up with here. Well, g'day the concurrent viewers, 0, chat rate 0 and playback 0 according to my YouTube analytics. I'm Macca and this is the live stream for the week. Yes, we're going to talk about a couple of things tonight. First of all, I'm going to talk about the Post-Eldar video that I put up earlier on the Craft World Eldar. And then we're going to talk about, the Midwinter Minis video, which is very interesting, we'll say. And then we might talk about some other stuff at the end there. Hey, Deckfish in the chat. I am doing very well. Hey, Leadham. Leadham and I also were watching James Bond yesterday. We're both big James Bond fans, so we did a James Bond mini marathon. I think it's going to become our new weekly thing for a bit until we've watched all the films. But I think we were both surprised. We really liked both Dr. No and especially from Russia with Love. We both, I think, had forgotten how good they were. As for trying 9th edition yet, no. Do remember my state is very, very, very strict on the old Rona. So those kind of gatherings where, you see people isn't really a thing yet in this place. So yeah, not many people yet, but that's alright, I'm going to kick off anyway. I did a preamble for the people who watch this back later on. But basically we're going to do the What Broke the Fans video, talk about that a bit, and we'll also talk about the Midwinter Minis video on pricing, which is hilarious for how wrong it is. But that's not a slight on Midwinter Minis, it's just there is two major factors basically that he didn't take into account, which completely changes the dynamic of his video. So, where to begin? Codex Eldar, or Craft World Eldar Codex, however you want to say it. What broke the fans? That video was actually a real pain in the ass to research. What I managed to do in the end, though, was I was able to pull up a set of slides for it that I could put in the background that was screen caps I took of all the different codexes they had from essentially Rogue Trader right through to 6th edition. And I took a few things from 7th and 8th and 9th, but you won't really notice those. And I have those slides right here, actually. So I can chuck them up in the background. Start with some of the 2nd edition stuff, because I think it was just beautiful. Love the look of it. Even right down to the runes and symbols was all there. You can watch the video if you like, Sebastian, in the chat. First, it won't really affect, I don't think, what we're talking about now. There was one super salty comment on the video that I put out earlier today, the What Broke the Fans video itself, about how I'm always whinging and how the person's unsubscribing and such because I didn't mention warp spiders in 3rd edition. What can I say? I'm not perfect. I can't mention every single unit in the codex because it's not relevant to the video, I guess. That's the lesson to be learned. But yeah, there was some really nice stuff in here. I mean, look at just simple things like painting the Guardians here. Ignoring the fact that, okay, there's a guy with a mohawk, and yeah, these are kind of funky looking old white metal miniatures. The colour palette choice here, the vibrant colours, is actually really neat. And I love what they did with the helmets in the middle there, the variation of the colours. It's great. It's just a cool way to add something interesting to it. So, yeah, I'll put up, as I said, I'm just going to have a few of these in the background. If people have any questions about the video I just did, please hit me up. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. You'll even notice that some like these Phoenix Lords, I deliberately included several slides like this. Not just because I love the miniatures, but in order to show that these same miniatures on the screen right now, this is a screenshot from the Codex from 1994, you will find these exact same models if you go on to Games Workshop's website right now for sale still, at full price. So, yeah, I sort of deliberately added these in. I guess I'm a jerk for it. But just to help point it out to the audience subliminally, there's the warp spiders, by the way. They did make it into the video, so I don't know why that guy was complaining so much. I guess because I didn't mention them specifically by name more than once, if at all, because it matters when I'm looking at the whole Eldar as a faction. I do like the fact that they've added in all the spiders' webs and such on the back of them there. It's part of why I chose that shot, because now you won't see that kind of patterning. A lot of the time it'll just be a rune or even just nothing on the back of their armor plate, whereas here they actually went to the effort of hand painting in all these spider webs on them. Just neat little details that you saw in 2nd edition, which you don't necessarily see today. Fire dragons, of course, the colours are pretty much the same as what you see today, just instead of the bright orange tips on the barrels, they mostly just go for the bronzes, and of course goblin green bases with sawdust for grass went out of fashion 30 years ago. The reason the images are so small comes down to the scan quality. Unfortunately, this is bigger on the screen right now, for me at least, than it was in the original codex. You can't magnify something that's only printed in so many pixels, unfortunately, because it gets blurry. I can zoom right in for you. That's not a problem. It just gets blurrier as I do it. So, yeah. I can try and do that with some of the armies that you'll see as well. Such as this army that I absolutely love. So yeah, super blurry as a result of zooming in. But hey, you can only get so much quality out of an image, I'm afraid. Just like a sound recording, you can't add any quality that's not already there to it when it's recorded. So yeah, I just love what he did with this army. And you don't see stuff like this, since you don't really see many fan-made armies or Golden Demon winning armies featured in codexes. It's usually just studio paint jobs now. Something neat. So yeah, it was just really nice to show that stuff off. And I forgot just how beautiful a lot of it was, especially if you go into the Craft Worlds Codex, which I think that combined with the Eldar Codex at the time, the two in sync together. Holy crap, what a book. Jeez, those Dire Avengers are the same Dire Avengers now, so is the Warp Spiders, so is the Shining Spears, so is basically everyone except the Banshees are the same models now. And this is from the year 2000, this book. I know they did add Storm Guardians for Ulthwé in the Eye of Terror campaign book, which I do have a physical copy of. But I didn't really think it was too relevant to the video, just to mention offhandedly that yes, there was one unit added, and I suppose a Seer Council as well, in another book. It's too minimal when you think about the fact that, this was a $15 supplement in my country at the time when the codexes were around $32, and you got 6 different sub-factions in this fleshed out, which you compare that to today, and these sub-factions you get, like, you want to buy Codex Salamanders, it's going to cost you like $50, and it's $70 for Codex Space Marines. So just to play that chapter, I'm going to spend $120, whereas back then, I could play any of the 6 different craft worlds and an Eldar faction, and it would only cost me like $45, $47 actually. So just sort of some of the stuff I wanted to point out in the video. And of course you had these lovely pictures. You have a Laytok here, with all the old school paint colours as well. Sunburst Yellow, Bleach Bone, Storm Blue, Regal Blue is one of my favourite colours ever. Beal Tan, which is funny because look at the effort. They moved away from doing Beal Tan in later codexes, and I think that's because it's just a pain in the dick to paint. White armor and white trim on vehicles and such, versus doing Siam Harm, where it's spray paint one side of the Falcon Grove tank red, spray paint the underside white, done. Whereas Beal Tan here, if you look on the grav tank itself and just see what kind of quality that that thornwork is that's painted onto the surface. Just how much time it would have taken to go to all the effort of doing that. Yeah, not something you really see on display in codexes now, which is kind of a shame. Yandon, of course, they were the only one that got an actual supplement as of 6th edition onwards. The only craft world, unfortunately, that got some love. Super chat from Tunguska says, I never thought about this until your video, but does anyone in universe ever comment on how humans and Eldar look almost exactly alike, minus the ears? Does anyone in the lore ever comment on that? Back in Rogue Trader, it was a thing where humans and Eldar could breed together, and apparently the old ones created them at the same time, even though the Eldar predate humanity by about 60 million years. So, yeah, that's a thing. Oh, is my audio terrible today, Mr. Veltiel? That's a shame. I'm not sure why. I can try and unplug the mic and plug it back in, see if that helps. It will probably make a terrible noise for everyone, though. I apologise. I don't have a soundboard plugged in at the moment because the old one broke. So I got to just go off the mic itself, going straight into the back of the computer. It's not great. Hopefully that works out all right. Yeah, so moving on from Meandon, yep, Simharn. Very interesting that you got a main Simharn earlier picture in the Codex, but you don't get a Simharn actual army in this section, because the bit they showed of them was all the way back here. In this section here, you actually got a Simharn army. And then when you get to their actual little section, it's just a couple of bikes. Just a bit of a downer. Yeah, of course, the 4th edition Eldar. See if there's any other really interesting pictures along the way. This one will make people sad. Yeah, 1994, 1999, 2013. What a change, hey? It's that model has really evolved over time. Yeah, well, that's the thing, 333 in the chat. Why did the paint job get worse over the years? Frankly, the paint job got worse because they're trying to be more generic. It's a molten lava man, essentially, the avatar of Kane, so therefore they've painted it like a molten lava man, forgetting the fact that he has a tabard or a loincloth that's made of cloth and jewels all over him. They've thrown aside the fact that he can be more than just a Balrog, basically. Whereas the original avatar of Kane, like, he had these green knuckles and all these different coloured gems, and the runes and little trinkets hanging off his armour all painted in blues and greens and nicely contrasting colours. Like, even the top knot is green with a white stripe, whereas now you're lucky if it's black with a slightly white edge. Just, they must have been the individuality. And of course, the 1999 3rd edition Codex has that avatar of Kane with the Beal Tan scheme, where they've incorporated the thorns of the craft world into the headdress. It's so nice. That 1994 version is beautiful, and the 1999 version. In fact, what's depressing is the basing difference. There is more going on in the basing of the 1999 3rd edition one than there is in the 2013 edition one. Like, they couldn't even be stuffed to put anything on the base. It's just a couple of little sprinkles of grass flock. Whereas the 1994 one has no... It's no worse, really, than the 2013 one, apart from, okay, it's goblin green. So, yeah, that's a depressing fact of life. Made all the worse by the fact that, this exists, which I've shown now in a couple of live streams, but 17 models came out in that 4th edition Codex either just prior to or in the 4th edition codex. 13 models that are still in production today are from the 1990s, the Rogue Trader and 2nd edition releases. Everything else combined is only 14 kits, and that's all come out in the last 10 years. Like, just think about that. That's just insane to me. But anyway, that's depressing. Let's move on to something interesting. So I was watching this video here by Midwinter Minis, and he goes through... I'll just mute it in case I accidentally turn it on. I don't want to blow everyone's eardrums out. He goes through the these different models, and he looks at versions of them in a 1997 White Dwarf article or a price list, and then does a direct price comparison to today with inflation and goes, hang on a minute, these are cheaper. There's two big things he missed out on. Firstly, the amount of kits that lost miniatures. So great examples of this would be, say, Cadian Shock Troops, Catachans, Orc Boys, Dire Avengers. So you have a lot of kits that start out with, say, 10 models, 12 models, things like that. 20 models in the case of Guard. Now there's 5 models in the kit, 10 models in the kit instead. So they've halved the model count, and yet they're still saying, or sort of selling for a similar price. I did a video on this 3 years back. Games Workshop pricing was what it was called. And in it, I have this spreadsheet. And what I did was essentially the same thing. I had a White Dwarf from 1999 and another from 2002. And I went through and I took all the prices, put them all in, and did the conversion over time for inflation and worked out a price, what it was, to what it should be, next to what it is. So in this instance, on the left-hand side there, you've got Tactical Squad. So Space Marine Tactical Squad in 1999 was $40. As of 2015, it was $63.50, which is when I made the spreadsheet. It was selling for $65, so it was slightly more than inflation. And this was a trend across the board. In some cases, it would be significantly more. What was crazy, and the big thing that is the second major point that Midwinter Minis got wrong in his video, and majorly wrong, and you can see it on screen right now. What are the guys on the left made out of, and what are the guys on the right made out of? And I'll just give the chat a moment to work this incredibly complex equation out. Hey DCP in the chat there. I'm glad you enjoyed the video, Fainal. So, obviously, metal. Metal is the thing the chat is saying, and you're dead right. In fact, in this video, I accounted for that. On the left there, you'll see that white metal, at the time of making the spreadsheet, so 2015, white metal was $69 per kilogram. Resin was $17.90 per kilogram. So 3.85 times modifier. What does that mean? It means if you made something out of white metal and you made the exact same thing out of resin, just the material alone was nearly 4 times cheaper to use resin. And that was not industrial prices, which are much lower. That was in regular prices for what you and I could go out for today and buy them. Another super chat from Tunguska. Can't remember where I saw it, but some former Games Workshop store clerk said how his manager told him not to bother trying to stop thieves because of how worthless the boxes of models are in real terms. That's correct. It actually costs more to make the packaging than it does the miniature. So, Midwinter's video, he's taking the price per unit. And a great example of this is if you look at one of these, say Gulroach, the Dragon of Chaos from Fantasy. He sold in white metal for $70, and the current price at the time of when I did the spreadsheet was $118. So it had gone up slightly, but it probably would have worked within inflation. The problem was, once you figured out the material cost difference, it was a massive difference in price. And that's going off the fact that, hey, you're paying for the material as much as you're paying for the labour and the moulds and stuff like that. I mean, it's not a perfect spreadsheet because there are other factors than material costs to take into account. But material cost is a big deal when you're talking about metal, because white metal is so much more expensive than resin. The actual cost of your materials is a major factor in production of any good or service that you're providing. So 1000 Suns kit was another one. Carl Franz on his Griffin, so $55 in white metal, $90 in plastic. But the resin plastic cost, again, you're not including taking out taxes, you're not including taking out the labour cost, the small fee taken for the cost of the equipment that's making the mould, imperfect. These are all disclaimers I have to put in there because someone is going to pop up in the chat and say, Obi, what about taxes and shipping? Yeah, okay, I get it. What it boils down to, though, is the materials are, in the case of metal to resin, 4 times cheaper. From metals to plastics, you're talking somewhere in the realm of 11 times cheaper, because plastic is really, really efficient. It's very, very cheap. The problem with plastics is it's the most expensive molds. So that's your compensation. Cheaper molds with white metals and resins, much more expensive molds with plastic, but plastic itself as a medium is excellent, cost-effective material, which is why in industry, high-quantity items are made in plastic. It's, plus it's more stable than resin. So yeah, those are the two massive points that Midwinter Minis got wrong in his video. He simply looked at it and went, oh, okay, this bike kit of Chaos Bikers was this much then, and this plastic kit is this much now. Therefore, saving. Well, no, you haven't taken away the material cost, and you haven't taken away any other ancillary costs. In this case, it's not so bad, but in something like, say, Imperial Guard, much less minis in the box. There are other minis he talks about, like Necromunda, comparing a gang then to a gang now. Again, completely white metal miniatures on the left versus completely plastic miniatures on the right. So, is it a fair comparison? Again, plastic, approximately 11 times cheaper than it is to buy white metal. So, think about it. Any other crazy ones? Landspeeder, there's a great one there. How much white metal is in that Landspeeder on the left versus the Landspeeder on the right in plastic? Not to mention, a third factor that he's got wrong, and wrong is a strong word here, but an interesting point that he should take into mind is that the Landspeeder on the right is also a kit that is from 1999. It was in the 3rd edition starter box, and I think the mould has got a couple tweaks since then, or an extra sprue thrown in. With some weapon updates, I think the assault cannon and that. But essentially, it's the same plastic Landspeeder for 20 years, 21 years. That means that mould that makes that, the sculptor's fee for designing it, that kind of thing, yeah, you can pretty much safely say that it's been written off by now. That, okay, it isn't really costing you that much anymore to produce that kit. You've probably paid off the artist who designed it by now. I'm going to say probably because, stranger things have happened. Versus the Landspeeder on the left, which is a solid, heavy chunk of white metal. If memory serves me correct, it's something around the 170 gram weight range, something like that. So you've got 170 grams of solid metal versus, 35 grams maybe of plastic, if that. And plastic, again, 11 times cheaper. The model is also hollow, so it's using a lot less material, whereas the metal vehicle is completely solid, so it's a lot of extra material. So not only is it more expensive material, but using more of it. So all things that you have to take into account if you're going to do a price comparison. So people like to say, I get pricing comparisons wrong. I'll go back to this spreadsheet just so people can see it more easily. And that's going off a 2.5% inflation adjustment. Wages in Australia tend to go up somewhere from 1.5% to 2.3%. So wages aren't climbing as fast as the actual cost of products is going up, unfortunately. And I dare say it's probably the same in most of the Western world. Because, wealth inequality is getting worse. Such is life, I guess. And yeah, some of the different kits I have there. What you can't see on the screen, I might be able to show you later on in the video if I scroll up. Yeah, we've got the Carl Franz adjusted inflation scale there. So $74 it should have been, came out at $90, and that was before taking materials into account. Catachans is a great one. So I had to do it as, I think I made two separate categories for was it Catachans? Cadians. Cadians is back here. Categories H, I, and J. Because H versus I, it actually worked out that Cadians had gone down in price compared to inflation. But then you remember that the amount of models in the kit had changed, so once you factored in the model difference, then it worked out that actually you were paying significantly more, almost double the cost, in fact. So, just little things like that. So, it's crazy to me that Midwinter Mini's video is doing so well in this region. Because I get it, it's a positive video, and it makes it look like, hey, you know, maybe we're getting a pretty good deal out of the company. When in reality, no, you've biased the results through omission or a lack of fact. Deliberate or indeliberate, personally, I think it's just an oversight by him. He's tried to do the right thing and go, hey, I'm curious, you know, and done a direct inflation comparison. Hasn't taken some major factors into account, which is, to me, absolutely crazy. Yeah. Because I go to the effort of putting as much detail into these videos when I do them as I can. The most recent Games Workshop price video I did, I went through and was like, hey, this is all the different details and data that goes into making the product. You know, this is how much it costs to make a mold. This is how much it costs to ship. This is how much it costs to, you know, in wages and stuff like that. And even then, I couldn't get every single thing listed off and how much is spent on it. And my comments was full of downvotes and people going, oh, well, you know, you didn't factor in the legal costs of the company. It's like, how in-depth can a person go when they're not in the company, able to get every single point of data? No, I can't factor in the Games Workshop legal costs each year because I don't know what they are. But I can imagine that spread out over the size of the company at $1 billion company level each year, it's probably infinitesimal per box. That's my guess. If it's not, if they're spending more on their lawyers than they're spending to actually make their product, that's a problem. Because that's not sustainable. Anyway. Pricing. What a bitch. So I think we're done with pricing. Are we done with pricing for today? I feel like we're done with pricing. Since we're on the topic of Eldar for today, I would like to take the chance just to go quickly and look at the craft worlds themselves. And just see the range and some of the stuff I really like in it. The Avatar of Kane. Do they still sell the Forge World Avatar of Kane? Let's find out. Oh, by the way, I refuse to call them Eldari. They are the Eldar. Let's still the Shadow Spectres. That's nice. Yeah. See, why don't they... Since they're already making the Avatar of Kane in resin, in Failcast, why don't they just start making the Avatar... Yeah, okay, he's twice as expensive. But this one is huge compared to the original Avatar. Look at him next to a Eldar Guardian. Why don't they just start making this Avatar at Games Workshop? What's wrong with that? Just pick up the mold, carry it next door to Games Workshop, and just say, just sell this. Instead of selling this thing in bloody fine cast, sell the other one. The other one's really nice. It's big, it's imposing, it looks like a monstrous creature should. It's a beautiful model. This is another beautiful model I spoke about in the video, which we don't see enough of, and that's the Spirit Seer, Wraith Seer. The Spirit Seer. Yeah, just something about it. The little lanyards hang off at the back. we have the actual Wraith Lord body itself in plastic, the resin upgrade with the spear arm, the weapon on the shoulder. It's just a nice looking miniature. And you just don't get that. You just don't get that kind of love from Games Workshop, because it's the sort of thing they could expand into over on the Eldar range. Because for me, it's not just about talking about, hey, this is the what broke the fans, here's all the things that the Eldar lack. Well, they've got a lot of the things that they lack over here at Forge World. So it's like, take some of these ideas, like new aspect warriors, and run with it. Take it, put it into your 40k Eldar. It doesn't have to be Shadow Spectres. You can come up with something different. That can be done. Back in the first edition Rogue Trader book, it said, hey, here's the... I'll bring up the slide, in fact. The many aspect warriors. And this line right around here. Other aspects are not covered in this list, but remain to be described as new models are released. And I read out each of these names. And I didn't include warp spiders in that because it wasn't on this list. And then a person cracked the shits at me in the comments on my other video. Yeah. But yeah, it says new models will be released for other aspects over time. And it's like, great. Can't wait to see that. But they just haven't really. The Shadow Spectres exist, and that's the Shining Spears. They're pretty much the only two that came out since then. Of course, they've got their Titans, and, well, essentially Wraith Knights are the size of Titans. I don't know why they don't count as a super heavy vehicle or super heavy creature. Their inclusion in that 6th edition codex to me was a major mistake on that account, when you consider that Knights were out by the time this codex was released, and yet somehow these things existed. Oof. That Lynx with the Pulsar is beautiful. I'm actually a huge fan of the Warp Hunter. The Warp Hunter is one of my favourite vehicles. It's taking that whole tank destroyer concept of an Imperium tank and transferring it to an Eldar tank, taking that Falcon body, that chassis that's been in production since the 90s, taking off that turret and putting a large gun into the hull. It's just a neat way of doing something different with the tank that every other version you've seen of the Falcon chassis, they always change the top turret. This did something different with it. It went, hey, here's a bunch of blank space on the front of the hull. Let's occupy it with a gun and remove the turret entirely. To me, that is inspired. That is a beautiful way to do something different with your existing kits. So, yeah. And then, of course, you've got some of their super heavy vehicles. I think I like the Cobra most. The Lynx with Pulsar, it's fine. I think the Cobra gun just looks cool. So many nice Eldar kits over here at Forge World. Just getting absolutely zero love from G-dubs. So, meh. That's a thing, I guess. Beautiful vehicle. Plus the hull shape is really nice on this. The fact that it is like a giant version of... it's a giant version of the Warp Hunter, whereas the Lynx, less so. It's got this weird conjoined hull thing going on. Scorpion Type 2 is also a really sexy kit. Actually reminds me a lot of the Primaris tank that came along. I do apologise for people. I am about to show you Primaris, so, trigger warning, I guess. Let's see. On the left, get me Super Heavies, Lords of War. Ugh, that did not narrow this list much. Astraeus. This tank here, the Astraeus Super Heavy, is basically the Scorpion Grav tank. Hang on, I'll do the old split the screens. I know. I can just hit window and flick it all to the side. There we go. It's the Imperial equivalent. Is that not the same thing? Nah, it seems like the same thing to me. Just Primaris stealing other people's shit again. Yeah, there was such lovely stuff for the Eldar at one point. And it's a real shame because just looking at these kits here, like what the Guardian squad, they're from 99. They came out for 3rd edition. Warp Spiders, 94. Avatar, 93. The Black Guardian squad and the Guardian squad are the same thing. The little weapons platform became a plastic add-on in 4th edition. The Dire Avengers, same model since 3rd edition. But now you get half as many in the box, and the box costs more than it did when it was 10 models. Eldrad's new, but I mean, let's look here. Alright, I'm going to be very biased. This is the modern Eldrad with all the modern painting techniques, the modern sculpting wizardry of computers, and the best that plastic injection molding can do these days. And yep, it's got heaps of edge highlighting. I mean, they've made the black interesting with all these bright white and grey highlights. But compare that now, just for my own selfishness, to this Eldrad here. Okay. So on the one hand, you have boring black Eldrad here with a, he's got some runes and stuff on there. He's not completely featureless. Versus the Chad 2nd edition Eldrad with these beautiful bright gems on the armor, all these runes picked out in bright yellows across the back. So much more interesting to me. The vibrant reds on the cloak. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being an old fuddy-duddy or something. Oh, it was so much cooler back in my day when we walked through 6 inches deep of snow just to go to the toilet in the morning or some crap. Worst analogy I've ever made. Yeah, so many nice models over there at Games Workshop that just aren't getting much love. That's disappointing. It's disappointing to me. It's cool. I love. See, this is another good thing. People love to do dioramas, not dioramas. I guess collage style paint schemes, interesting space effects for the holofields and such, artwork on their Eldar vehicles, and I love this kind of stuff. The super chat from Convincing Reality says, will a substantial amount of people ever shift more to third-party miniature companies so Games Workshop might finally get the memo? Folk actually want non-Primaris models. Victorian Miniatures comes to mind. The problem with that Convincing Reality is that it costs so much. A lot of the people who leave Games Workshop and start their own miniatures companies basically price based off Games Workshop model because, well, that's what they know. So they know people are paying it, and that's roughly what something sells for, so they can't undercut the main company too much. I mean, all of them are cheaper. It's just the amount varies. And the Games Workshop has the IP. That's the killer. If Games Workshop was just selling models alone, they'd be nowhere near as popular as they are. It's the combination of the game, the IP, and the miniatures together which makes Games Workshop work. It's lightning in a bottle. And they don't know that it's lightning in a bottle at Games Workshop. Hipster Werewolf says in the chat, murals. Yes, that was what I was thinking of to describe painting vehicles like this. Thank you for making it work when my brain didn't. Games Workshop doesn't realise that the cornerstone is the balance of gameplay, models, and the IP itself. And the IP is the thing they've been letting slip away more and more since the beginning of 8th edition. Because the 8th edition problem is in that they're bringing in more and more units and they're just shoehorning them into the universe at the expense of existing background for the universe that says something should or shouldn't exist. Now, it's fine to change the universe, to add things. It's good to have growth. There's 2 problems with that, though. First is bloat, which is very real. Name me 10 different kits that came out this year. You'd be surprised. You'll have forgotten most of them. that have come out this year. You'll probably remember one faction. You won't realise that there are multiple whole factions for 40k and for fantasy that have come out this year. So there's the bloat factor, but there's also when you break the background, when you break the rules of your universe constantly, then the stakes lower for your universe, and consequently, people's investment in your universe lowers. So if you establish that something can be done a certain way, and then all of a sudden you change that, people will go, well, why am I even bothering getting invested in the story if you're just going to change the rules of the story? And that's what makes people leave franchises. So a great example of that might be character motivation. You take a character like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, and his character is completely different to his established character. In fact, his character arc goes backwards, if anything, and so people naturally hate it. It's not they weren't willing to see the director of Last Jedi go in a new direction. That wasn't the problem at all, that people gave him the benefit of the doubt. It was what he ended up doing with it that shit them. But yeah, beautiful Eldar vehicles over on Forge World. And this. The G.I. Joe. Yeah, more Phoenix Lords. Karandras from 1994. Warlock, 1994. Illic Nightspear. I think I'd have to check my little chart, but I worked out he came with... He was the early 2010s. Alright. Yeah. See, some models hold up better than others. Like these Dark Reapers, I reckon they hold up pretty well. They're quite a nice looking model. But they're also one of the more newly updated Aspect Warriors. Swooping Hawks, Striking Scorpions, not so well. I think it's a real testament, though, to the art style and Jess Goodwin's sculpting ability, how well so many of these things held up. I can show you a picture of a... I'll go find the Fire Dragons. Hang on. There we go. This is the Fire Dragons, the current kit, which went into production in 2nd edition. This is the artwork from Rogue Trader. So, we'll zoom that in a bit. Rogue Trader artwork next to the current Fire Dragons. That goes to show you how well the initial design just worked. Because even though these miniatures are showing their age, how good is that? Another super chat from Tunguska says, so keeping Eldar stuff in production for a quarter century is no problem at all, but we've lost like half the Horus Heresy range since 2016. Yeah, that's a problem. What's crazy, I did a chart on one of my Chaos videos really early on in the channel, and I went through and got a picture of basically every tactical Space Marine squad. This is pre-8th edition too, so every tactical squad ever, and it was one tactical squad for every edition, and then occasionally a second tactical squad in an edition would happen. So Space Marines have had like 8 different approaches over the years, or 8 different tactical squads, something ridiculous like that. By the time they reached like 6th edition, it's just depressing when you think about it. Dark Drogon says in the chat, I know he wrote it earlier, but I'll read it out now, because he's posted it twice, so he really wants me to read it out, I think. Fun fact, the Bone Singer is not in production, has no current rules. Craft World doesn't have one Tech Marine to fix vehicles. Games Workshop Balance 101. Force Sleepers Union asks, what do you think about a metallic Emperor's Children 30k scheme? Some of the colour palettes look metallic, but most presented as flat purple. Go check out Kiz Doug's work. He's done metallic Emperor's Children, and it looks really nice. Yeah, really nice stuff. It can look beautiful, in other words. Comrade Dyatlov asks, or Dyatlov, what is your opinion on the Gabriel Angelos mini from Forge World? I love how the model screams apes together strong. Yes, Kizdugs is Raptor Imperialis on Instagram. So, Gabriel Angelos on Forge World. So when I look at this model and I look at that munted head of his, I immediately think of, let's see. Have we got like a young Abraham Simpson? So this head is that head. That's what I see when I look at that model. What is Gabriel Angelos? Seriously, it's him. Flying Hellfish. That could be a Blood Raven, you don't know. The model is okay. I don't like this whole gigantic hammer thing they've got going. It looks very Warcraft to me. Thunder hammers were always a bit over the top, but this is starting to get too excessive, and it's something they did a lot with the Death Watch as well, these giant two-handed hammers. I think what's more insulting, though, the miniature is fine. Like, replace the head, maybe tone down the weapon, like a big axe, glaive, halberd, spear shaft, basically anything other than what it is. Even just a smaller hammerhead would look better. The miniature is fine. The base is lovely. The thing that kills it is, the head and that hammer. And, of course, Dawn of War 3, where he's backflipping in that Terminator armor up into the air, and it's like, oh, do you even care? And that's what I mean by devaluing the IP. Do you even care? Because immediately, the people who really love the IP and care about it, I mean, there are people out there who don't care. Games should do anything with the story, and there are people who would not give a crap. But for those of us that do care, it takes you out of it and go, you know what? I don't care about this game. I don't need that in my life. and that backflipping model was what did it. But yeah, as a model, especially as a 30k model, like if you were able to clean off, say, the Blood Raven off the shoulder and the little Crux Terminatus, and you left little laurel wreaths, the intricate scroll work on there, clean off the bird off this leg, this model would fit really well into what a 30k army is as a really neat Praetor. So there's nothing wrong with the model itself in my mind, apart from the head and the hammerhead. So the heads, both heads on this model are fucked. So back to the Eldar range. The Night Spinner, I don't really rate it as a tank, but I think as a design it's okay. The turret's getting a little bit ludicrous on top. It's nowhere near as sleek as the Fire Prism and Falcon turrets, even though their Fire Prism turret shares a lot of parts with the Night Spinner turret. The Fire Prism just pulls it off better. I guess it looks less like a wind trap than the Night Spinner's one does. Dark Drogon sends a super chat, but no question. But thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. The Wraithlord. This plastic kit has, again, it's one of those kits that's holding up the test of time. This Wraithlord here is a plastic kit that has been in production since, I think it was 2004 we got this actual kit. I know the Codex is listed as 2006, but I'm pretty sure we got this before the Codex dropped. But I could be wrong. If I am, I do apologise. But it's a great example of models holding up really well over time because, yeah, this base model just worked. Especially when you compare it to the older Wraithlords. There's a beautiful Wraithlord, actually, in the 3rd edition book. If I bring that across, there you go. Little Star-Spangled Man with a plan down here. So that's old school white metal Wraithlord. And by the way, for those who are wondering, yes, it was one of the worst models to assemble and would continually break in people's cases. Why? Because that gigantic solid white metal head is glued to a tiny, tiny little neck. It was kind of like the old Zoanthropes, if people remember those. The arms would break off, the legs would break off, the head would break off, because you've got these really long, large metal parts trying to glue together on tiny little ball joints. It did exactly what you'd think and would fall to pieces. Also, that was the standard of a first place Golden Demon winner in 1996. So I think a lot of average painters today would actually be able to do better than that standard. Goes to show how much the hobby has evolved over time. I'm not saying that all painters and players could achieve that level, but that was a incredibly high standard in 96. Just a neat little segue. What other cool Eldar models? The Eldar Rangers. They're another 4th edition special, and they've held up really well. Yeah, big fan of those. The Wraith Guard. Oh, let's open up the Wraith Guard. See, I love the Wraith Guard models, but the whole D-scythes and the Wraith blades and stuff, yeah. Too many D weapons. 6th edition PTSD. Super chat from Convincing Reality says, Untitled W do a fantastic version of Gabe, and their Starborn Ancients are a pretty decent simulacrum for Eldar. Yes, they are. Actually, I'll bring up Untitled W now. So, we've shown a lot of their work before on this channel. In previous videos. We want 28mm scale miniatures. As you can see, there's quite a lot of nice stuff here. I myself do have many of their models, I won't lie. So yeah, some really nice stuff in there. If you want to peruse the website, people, go for it. Lots of stuff that's good for Necromunda and other specialist games in there, as well as stuff for Militia, 40k, you name it. Yeah, Wraith units, so good. Hobo from Zozo in the chat. Macca, have you given the Brace for Terror's interview with Matt Murphy Kane a listen? I thought it was pretty good. Yes, I have. I do talk to both those people from time to time, and I think get along pretty well with both of them. In fact, I get on really well with Race for Terror, and I highly encourage people who haven't to go over to the Race for Terror channel on YouTube and watch some videos. He's been doing a good little series, which the Matt Murphy Kane is the 3rd part of the series, going over the Forge World painting style in depth. And he goes back to the original Imperial armor and when they started trying to paint models unlike GW and more like scale modeling competition miniature pieces. Doing weathering effects and mud build-up and chipping and all that kind of stuff, which is stuff that Games Workshop will safely say isn't known for. More 1990s Exarchs, Fugan, Asurman, Mulgan Ra, Storm Guardians. This upgrade pack came out with that Black Legion Eye of Terror book in 2003. Baharoth. He's probably the worst aged of the Phoenix Lords. I know that's a big statement because they've all aged, but just the flat wings, they're a prick to a joint of the body. Bryce in the chat asked, Macca, when are you going to do some more Battlefleet stuff? Need some inspiration for my normal Army Expedition fleet. We will do more. I will do more. If you go to the Eye of Horus podcast, there's a sub-podcast they do called the Brace for Impact podcast. I've been on 3 episodes, I believe, of that. I think they're up to like episode 7 now. We just spoke about light cruisers the other day. We did an episode on escorts prior to that. And Liam and Tim did an episode on grand cruisers prior to that. So you can go and see a bunch of different content all about Battlefleet Gothic over there. We go through ships, ship types, ship points, stats, what's good, what's bad, all that kind of stuff. And Jack, who runs it, he'll actually be he has his own YouTube channel, and he'll be making a video which he'll put up on this channel soon, just as a bit of an advert for his own page, which I think people will quite like, which is all about his 30k conversion projects. You may know him from Facebook as Anvils of Connor. What do I think about Creature Caster? I think the creatures are nice. I just haven't had a real use for any of them. This upgrade frame is another interesting one. I'm surprised that this is still in production because it's actually a pretty nice frame. This came out for the Medusa 5 City Fight campaign, and essentially it's command upgrades for all the different faction tanks, excluding Necrons, because I guess fuck Necrons was their theory at the time. So, for Space Marines, you had this Imperial Aquila Cupola setup. For the Tau, you have this sensor array that you could equip that straddled the nose on your Devilfish, like so. Oh, sorry, across the top of the spine, I guess. Yeah, the Aquila and Radio Compact for the back of your Lumen Russ. A big scanner, I guess, for a marine tanks. I mean, I think that's a cool looking part because that's very modern military. The idea of having these advanced extra additional optics on your vehicle. It's just a shame they'd put that right in the commander's cupola, or in the cupola, because this to me has always been the driver's one. That's the commander's one back there. It should probably be over here with this little satellite dishes instead, in its own separate mount. For the Eldar, they got this tiny little nubbin on the side. It's not that small. It's almost the size of a weapons platform, which is their command array. And for Chaos, they got this little weird 3-eyed demon head that you can put a face on. And you can also mount a weapon to it, which is actually kind of neat, because then you can have the multiple weapons thing going on. Yeah, this was a command upgrade sprue for Medusa 5, I believe it was, which I do have that book floating around. Maybe I'll do a nostalgia trip for it in future. Yeah, I think the Eldar range has held up pretty well as a whole. I mean, the Viper here, this model is 1990s vintage. And in some ways it shows it, but when it's given a nice paint job, like this Alatok skimmer right here, this Viper, it actually holds up really well. So I don't know that it's as pretty as, say, the Hunter from Forge World. I think I like those more nowadays. I'll bring those up. So I like doing the live stream because I can bring things up as I talk about them. You all. Thank you. The Hornet. Not the Hunter, the Hornet. Hunters are super heavy. Yeah, I really like the Hornet because basically the Viper and the Hornet are doing about the same job. The Viper is more of a bike. It's more like an attack bike in the Space Marines, or a land speeder, whereas the Hornet is more of an anti-tank attack version. But I like the twin-linked bright lance on it. It has an obvious lineage to the Falcon. It's just the perfect sort of intermediate design between the two. Looks really neat to me. But yeah, this is a model from 99. Like, how well does that hold up? Again, kudos to the sculptors. Like, Jess Goodwin, who did most of the Eldar sculpts and then did an amazing job. Jeez, what video about the Eldar wouldn't be complete without talking about the Wraith Knight? See, you could always understand a Wraith Lord being a monstrous creature, because look at the size of it. But the Wraith Knight being, yeah, it's just a jump monstrous creature, and then eventually becoming a gargantuan monstrous creature was, what a joke. The thing was huge. Look at it. Phil Kelly wrote that codex, and he wrote the section on the free fleet of foot and being able to still shoot was Matt Ward's idea, he says. yeah, throw Matt under the bus because he hasn't done enough damage to the game already. That's depressing. I love the webway gate. I think it's a really cool terrain piece, but the price is absurd. That's like a $10, $15 terrain piece. Yeah, it's tall. I don't give a crap how tall it is. It's just a pair of tubes. Like, you pretty much cut the same shape out of a piece of timber with a jigsaw in 5 minutes. Sand it back, paint it up. Good enough. Good enough for the tabletop. Yeah. Well, the poor Eldar have suffered greatly over time, it seems. So many miniatures, all from the 1990s and the early 2000s. Warwalker. There's another one. That got updated in 4th edition. The Warwalker before this was pretty interesting, we'll say. I don't know if there's a picture of it in the old armies. Yeah, there we go. There's one. Let me zoom in on that bad boy. Look at that sexy beast. It's got a little minigun out the side there for a scatter laser, and look at the Space Marines. Jeez. See, it looks like a modern Horus Heresy army. That would work. And look at this thing. Is that not a bastion? Just made of polystyrene and foam card? See? Look at that. Are there any videos going throughout the Mournival rules work and how they differ from normal rules? Yes. Tom from Mournival is going to come on the show and go through them with me one day soon. It's just down to when he's not as busy, because he is a very busy guy, and I'm very understanding of that. But yeah, he will come on the show soon, and we will go through the Mournival rules. Mournival rules, of course, proving that people who don't work for the company, working from their home office, can put out more concise, clear, and consistent rules more often than Forge World. Actually, I want to talk about that. I posted in our Salt Mines on Facebook today, and it was a conversation I saw and ended up having with a guy who was on the Dark Angels page in 30k, and I'll read this out, because someone was saying, like, hey, look, let's not talk about all the bad things about Book 9, let's just focus on the good things. And this guy says, the impetus to sit here and dunk on Forge World, the two fucking guys in all of Games Workshop who give a shit about our game, makes 0 sense. Do you just want them to stop making it? What's your goal here? Half the comments in these heresy groups are shit takes by scanners and recasters who are mad something doesn't make sense. Fucking house rule it. Are you the one person in the heresy community so blessed with a massive gaming group pickup? Games are impossible? Did you miraculously stumble upon hundreds of heresy players? For everyone else, there's no reason to get our dicks twisted up over a small oversight because there's no one else playing the game. Outside of our friends. Games Workshop doesn't give two shits about rule support for the heresy and all we have is the team working on it right now, so shut up and be grateful we aren't still having to turn Mark 7 into heresy armor. Well, I had a response to him, and my response was, your entire argument stems from the assumption that the developers at Forge World know what they are doing better than the community. This, I think, is a false assumption. They aren't people who have a long vested interest in the game and decades of experience. They are just fans who were able to talk the talk and got a job. When you compare the quality and quantity of their work in relation to people like the Mournival event guys, who wrote so much in the same time frame, part-time in their home offices, that it really makes the guys who have a full-time job and employment making these, and the resources of a billion-dollar multinational company behind them, look pretty middling. Yes, there's always a positive and negative to anything. Movies, TV, music, accommodation, restaurants, they're all reviewed, and Forge World is not some entity above this. You pay for the product, and they have to earn that. They cannot just dump out a book when they feel like it and hold out a hand for money. The community is not a charity, and the content is not free, and your base message of positive reception is drowned out by the actual repercussions of what you said, which boiled down to be grateful for something and be grateful for what you've got, as if we should praise something that's not working correctly. Because I can go through here and break down his argument point by point. For instance, the two guys in Games Workshop who give a shit about a game, he then says straight after that, fucking house rule it. So it's like, okay, if they give a shit about the game, why should we have to house rule it? Shouldn't they have done their job that they get paid for by us to do it correctly? Come on. And the whole thing that, hey, Games Workshop doesn't give two shits about real support for the heresy, and all we have is this team working on it right now, so shut up and be grateful. Well, again, it's not a charity. It's not free. They're not two developers who give us rules in their spare time and are making the game happen. They're two guys who are earning a full-time living, 365 days a year. They're getting paid to make these books. And so I naturally expect a high standard because I'm paying for it. I'm paying for that high standard. Part of the reason why I haven't done a video proper about Book 9 yet is I'm waiting to have it in my hand. It's not that I can't read the scans of it. It's not that I can't look at all the pictures people have sent me of it. No, I've read it and such like that. That's not the point. I'm waiting for my one to be in my hands so I can fairly appraise it. Because there's going to be some good in it, but there's going to be some crap in it. I already know at least 4 contentious points from it that are major stuff-ups. I've also seen several that have been misprinted. A photo of which was emailed to me by one person, and I had a couple of PMs of misprints from others. And you have things like, missing pages from the book. Misprints happen, I'm not going to get my knickers in a twist about it. But then there are rules that are completely arse about. It happens. And saying that, hey, this rule here is twisted about and, yeah, okay, we can house rule it and try and fix it. But the thing is, that's their job. They provided the product. And in my mind, you're paying, like any product, you're paying for something to come to you and it should be in a really good condition. If you went out and you bought a car and there was scratch marks on your dashboard, yeah, you'd be shitty because it should be arriving to you in mint condition. Well, it's the same thing when you buy a book. If it's arriving and the rules don't work as advertised for the game, that's questionable. I'll give one example now. Just one example of a thing that doesn't work from Book 9. In Book 9, there is the Deathwing Companions. They are a replacement for a command squad. The squad of Deathwing Companions can be taken, well, it has to be taken with a character, and the character must join the unit and cannot leave the unit. That unit can take Terminator armor. The only transport available to them as a dedicated transport is a Land Raider Proteus. Now, the problem with the Land Raider Proteus is its transport capacity is 10. But 5 Terminators and an attached HQ, who would have to also be in Terminator armor, because they can only be in Terminator armor if the character they're attached to is, that means that you have a minimum of 12 models in that squad, and therefore they cannot fit into the 10 model tank. So this is a brand new book, brand new unit, but someone couldn't figure out the basics of that unit when they wrote the bloody book. It should have been, okay, if they're in power armor, they can take a Land Raider as a dedicated transport. If they're all in Terminator armor, then they can take a Spartan as a dedicated transport. Should have been how they wrote that. Now you see, I don't even have the book in my hands yet, but I've given you the solution to the problem. And I don't even work for the company. How's that for you? Amazing stuff. Am I condescending right now? I sound like I'm condescending, because I'm being very condescending. It's like that old joke, what do you call a Greek skydiver? Condescending. Yeah, that's one example of a problem with Book 9. And I mean, there are great things in Book 9. But, these mistakes are out there. And there's no point just ignoring it because it is a problem. HQ units, especially command squads, the sort of unit you want to be transporting in a dedicated transport. Therefore, that's the sort of thing that, needs to be fixed. Now, it's not the only problem, but we'll get into that when I've got the book in my hands. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to set up my camera and I'm going to flip through the pages. I'll read through all the fluff at once in my own time. I will rip out the camera for when I get to the rules sections and start going through the Legion rules of the book. and will point out anything that seems really bizarre to me. I won't show every little rule. I think legally I can get away with it because I'm doing a review, an evaluation of the product. But I don't want to get copyright struck by them either because I'm sharing their new content, even though everything is up on the internet already anyway. So, yeah. Just to get back to an earlier point, for those who join the stream later on, one of the things I spoke about at the very start of the video was the Midwinter Minis. Highly appraised, I'm going to call this video on is Warhammer really getting more expensive? And it boiled down to, yes, it is, but he was wrong. And the reason he was wrong was because he didn't take into account white metal in the miniatures versus plastic, which is a massive, massive price difference, which was sort of my major point, as well as the fact that many of these kits that he looks at, unfortunately, pack less models in the box than they did originally, and so you can't just go one for one. A box of Cadians, a box of Catachans in 1999 versus a box of Catachans now. It's not a one-to-one evaluation because there's less models in the box now. So you have to take into account what it should be. Basically, he did half the maths required. And I proved it with this spreadsheet from a spreadsheet that I made 5 years ago from a video I bought out 3 years ago, which goes through squads, their inflation over time, what the adjustment worked out to be. It's kind of important stuff when you're going to make a video about pricing. So I'm just going to go through some of the super chat now, or some of the chat now. Let's see, Asian characters. That's not his name, it's just the guy's name is a bunch of Asian characters, so I have no idea what that translates to in English. Last year's Armies on Parade at my local Games Workshop was about 20 dioramas, 16 of which were ultras, and not well-painted ultras at that, no basing or anything. I'm fine with that, believe it or not. I did some pretty salty videos early on in the channel's history where I spoke about Armies on Parade and the clusterfuck that it was. And it was because they were doing Armies on Parade at the time as people would bring in their diorama and then all their mates would come in and just vote for them, and then they would win. And that was a problem because you had people who didn't deserve to win winning. And yeah, okay, it's not the Crystal Brush, it's not your Golden Demon, it's just a little fun in-store thing. But the person who's winning should be the best presented on the day. I like the idea of everyone participating in Armies on Parade. Setting that goal for yourself of, I'm going to make a display board, I'm going to paint an army, I'm going to decorate the board, and I'm going to show that, is a worthy goal, even if you may be beyond your skill level. Because the only way you're going to get better is by forcing yourself to do these things. It's like anything. You want to get good at sports? You don't just sit on the couch. You actually get out there and hit that ball. Okay? Same thing with this. You're not going to get better at the hobby if you're not participating in it actively and pushing your limits. That's why I get so aggravated at people who don't take criticism for bad painting well. Especially if it's helpful criticism, not just, you suck. It's because if you're in this hobby to just sit idle on your skills and not try and improve them, that's pretty pathetic to me. And it's not that, it's different if someone's got a disability or an impairment. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not just going to be like, oh, you're missing 2 arms and paint like shit? Well, you suck. No, that's not fair on the person, right? There's some nuance to this. But if a person is young, they've got the ability, they have the time, and yet they choose to just not do it, I think they're doing themselves a disservice, and I just think they could do better by themselves as a person for it. That's all. And so, more people participating in Armies on Parade, better. Even if the armies aren't great. But that said, they do need to pick the armies that are best and present the awards to those armies, which I think is fair to say. The one thing that can kill you, like I lost a Armies on Parade one year to an army that I felt was shit. And boy, you think I'm salty normally. You should have seen what was happening inside my brain when that happened. Because the army was painted badly, but with non-metallic metallics. And this guy's friends all voted for him, and, metallics all over his army, man. How cool is that? It's like, yeah, but they're not good. They're not well painted. It looks like grey highlighted with white. It doesn't look like metallics. That's the whole point of that technique. And yeah, oh jeez, I was so angry that day. I think Kat might have been there. No, it was a different day. No, Kat was there for when I participated in another painting competition. I think him and I just ended up going to the pub and drinking for like half the day, and then wandered back to the Games Workshop quarter cut. That was a good day. That's a good way to do all painting competitions. Just go and get half plastered before you rock up to the actual comp, because you can't be bothered standing around all day. Yeah. No, honestly, I just want to see people do their best in the hobby. On the channel, though, I'm going to come across as negative, because of course I am. I'm looking at the things the company is doing badly most of the time, because that's what the channel exists for. It's the whole point of being called the outer circle. We're on the outside. We're the odd one out of the community. You know, I could do a video all about the stuff that's great about the community, but, you know, I'm not going to say people are shills, but there are plenty of channels out there that have really positive things to say, you know? And there's nothing wrong with going to those channels and enjoying their content. Sometimes you just need a break from the salt. You don't want to just go out there and go, everything sucks, you know? Nobody wants to hop on the internet all the time and hear someone go, oh, everything's bad about what you like. No, that's not right. Everyone here who's watching right now, you owe it to yourself to go out and hop on a channel that's talking about all the great things in the hobby, and just remind yourself of that. Every year I try to do a couple of episodes. It's all like, hey, there's all the great stuff going on with the company right now, just to remind people that it is a thing, you know. These channels are out there. There are certain channels that, you know, like all the war channels and such, that only cover war. Yeah, they're probably not going to build up your enthusiasm for the hobby as much, because many of those channels, like there's one, I think is it Wolflord Rowe, which I listen to occasionally, and he just reads out passages from different novels. But it pretty much always ends as, wow, just wow, what a passage that was. Doesn't that just tingle the spine? You can't say that for every single passage, right? You know, it's positivity there, that's all. Go out, watch things that are positive. Build, paint, play. You know, that's the heart of it. Get out there, build things, enjoy what you do, but hold yourself to a high standard. I hold myself to a high standard. So, you know, it's yeah. I'm going off on a tangent here. Someone in the chat has said they want to know what was going through my head when I lost that Armies on Parade to that non-metallic army. To be honest, it was more just a case of, are you fucking kidding me? Repeating over and over in my head. Because I feel like if I lose a paint competition fairly, I think I'm a pretty rational guy and can tell when I've been jibbed or not. If I lose a competition fairly, I want to walk away and I'm not bitter. I go home and go, man, I'm going to go to the next level. Okay, I didn't get to the level I'm at by sitting on my ass. Well, I mean, I kind of did. I paint sitting down, but I walk away and I go, I'm going to get better because I lost. And I need to get better if I'm going to win next time, right? It's that competitive nature in me, you know, that alpha male coming out. Whereas, when I feel I've been jibbed, it's kind of the opposite reaction. I'm like, well, what's the fucking point in trying if I'm just going to lose to some shitlord like that? That's what goes through my head when I lose a painting competition to someone who I think didn't deserve it. There was a great example once where I was at a painting competition, and it was a statewide one. It was hosted by Games Workshop, and when they had to judge the finals, it was meant to be this GW affiliated guy who came in, who won a heap of golden demons and such, and he couldn't make it on the day. So the Games Workshop manager in the store, who is a nice guy to his credit, did the judging. And when I rocked up for the event on the day, he looked at my model and went, oh, you know, that's really nice. Oh, she's done an amazing job on this. And then another guy walks in who happened to be a friend of his that he knew quite well. And he pulls out his model. And he's like, oh man, I've been looking at your work in progress on this online. Oh, you're going to win for sure. And it's like, it doesn't matter if he feels that way or if he's saying that to his friend. He shouldn't have said it out loud on the day judging it at the painting competition. That, I think, was in bad taste, because immediately your fur goes up on you like an animal. You're like, oh, well, I see where this is going. I guess I'm wasting my fucking time. And, you know, I got a prize. I think I came runner-up in that category. But, yeah, that guy won it. And it wasn't the fact that he won it that disappointed me. It was the fact that the judge turned around prior to judging the competition and said, you're going to win for sure. That bothered me. If the judge thought it but didn't say it, completely different story. Because I knew the guy as well, and I knew the model. I thought, you know, he probably deserves to win. That's the thing. I thought that. I thought he deserved to win. But then when he did beat me, it was the fact that the judge was saying what he did prior to the competition. That upset me. A super chat from Tunguska says, the fact that Forge World re-released Umbra Bolters has me so confused. Yeah, it is confusing, especially when they discontinued the upgrade kits for Mark 6 Power Armor. In the chat, JMH says, TOC, quote, I didn't win. Wah. Well, if that's the point you got from that, I feel very badly for you and your inability to grasp the conversation. But yeah, overall, I think there's some positive messages in what I just said there. If you lose and you lose fairly, that's a challenge to you to do better. And sometimes you're going to upset when you lose and you don't feel it's justified. That's just what happens when, you're an adult. That's the way we feel about things. That's what we do with it. I could have cracked the absolute shits, gone, this is the exact person who did it to me at this store, and these are the people involved, and screw them. The prize is nothing. The prize is just some certificates, I think. But instead, I walked away and was like, well, that sucks, and it's left a bitter taste in my mouth. But you know what? I'm going to go away. I'm going to do better in future. And I think I have, so. Yeah, wow. But yeah, well, I think that's a pretty good spot to end the stream at. So we've talked about price, we've talked about Eldar range, and some beautiful vehicles that are in there. I did my Wolf Lord Row impersonation, which I don't dislike the guy either. Don't get that impression from what I said. As I said, I listen to him from time to time because he reads the passages out well, and some of the passages I really do like. I just find it comical that nearly every passage ends the same way. He probably is self-aware of it too, so I'm sure he'll take it in good humour. Yeah, it was fun. So I hope people enjoyed the what broke the fans on the Codex Craftworld Eldar. That was a lot of fun to put together. It took a long time though. There were some salty comments below the video, which happens from time to time. It doesn't upset me too much though, because you're going to get salt. You put yourself out on the internet, you're going to get salt. And it would be a real shame for people to put themselves out there, get the salt, and then just go, you know what? I'm going home. It's no need for that. It's the internet. People aren't going to hurt you with their words. Words can't hurt you. Sometimes they can make you second-guess your actions, I suppose. And sometimes people can say things that really make you think about what you've done and give you a new perspective. But that's the only power of words. If people are really mean to you, rude to you online, yeah, I get that can be unbearable for some people, and bullying is a bad thing, but don't take it to heart. Bad things happen on the internet. People say shit about each other all the time. The big problem we've got is people getting too upset over nothing at once, and instead of just taking it on the chin, they go to extremes and fight back. Like, I could have really bitten back at Major Kill for basically going out of his way to make a video to all his subscribers and just say how shit the Outer Circle is, and then trying to use sub count as some sort of metric for quality, because there are a lot of people who have very low sub counts, which make infinitely better videos than myself or Major Kill. But rather than do that, I just said, you know what? Cat probably shouldn't have said what he did without putting down supporting evidence. Therefore, I think I owe Major Kill an apology. So that's the route I took, rather than taking instant offense, then going, oh, who fucking is this guy? How dare he think he can turn around and say, oh my god, Outer Circle sucks, they're complete cunts. It would have done nothing for me to go and have a go at the guy. Would have been stupid of me to. Sometimes take that high ground, apologise to someone if you've made a mistake, or someone who's working for you or with you has made a mistake. Apologise. Don't keep apologising though. You've got to know when to pick that apologising battle. Something like the dreaded SJW curse, you know. There are some people who, no matter what the apology is, will never accept it. You just got to know that battle when you come up to it. But pride cometh before the fall. Don't let your pride get in the way. And I think we've all got pride. And trying to beat that is the hardest part. So yeah, Mac with the Outer Circle. Thanks for watching the stream, guys. And stay salty. See you all on the next one.